Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Fox 40s, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I know we just got a dusting of rain in the Sacramento region, and I know we need it, but I'm over it. I'm already over it. Can we skip fall and winter and just go straight to spring and summer? I mean, my gosh. I'm good though. I'm fine. I'm cranky. I'm not cranky. I don't know what I am. I feel like I'm fine. This rain is really. I'm not a rain person. I just don't like the rain. I like to be inside when it's raining. So fortunately, I'm inside with you fellas.
Sean with one of the strangest opening monologues in the history of the show.
Am I okay?
I hate the rain. I love the rain.
Help.
Someone needs to be medicated, I believe. And that brings us to, let's see, how do I say this one today? The Kings Pulse Podcast. Brenden Nunes. Brenden, what's going on?
I'm doing good. I don't have very many strong feelings about the current weather going on. I don't hate the rain for what it's worth. If I hated any weather, it was 115, 116 type of range, and this is a nice change. So, especially as somebody that's always wearing black, I don't know how you would rather have the hot weather, Sean.
Oh, I love it. Dude, I love the hot weather. I really do. I don't know how to explain it. Like when I was in Orlando a couple weeks ago, like everyone's like, "Oh, you're gonna hate the humidity." I was like, "No, I've been there before, guys. Like I know what it's like." And I kind of liked it. I just don't like when it's all humid and rainy, like it was rainy season and stuff. So I just don't like the rain. So I got cranky in Orlando. So I think anytime water falls from the sky, I'm not happy.
All right. I'll tell you this. I hadn't even really put two and two together here, but like anytime the barometric pressure changes like this and we go from like heat wave to like hot and cold and like back and forth and all over the place, I typically injure my back. It's usually one of those things. And sure enough, yesterday I took a bad move and popped my lower back pretty good. So I'll be laid up.
How would you describe the bad move? Like I need to know what not to do. So if how would you describe what you did?
Yeah. Okay. So one of my son's friends has been living with us for on and off, probably since May.
Hold on, let me write that down. No freeloaders in the house.
So we
that's one way not to hurt your back. Okay, go ahead.
We decided to move him into the gym downstairs yesterday, but in order to do that, we had to rearrange some treadmills downstairs. And in rearranging the treadmills, I injured myself.
Oh, so. There's your problem right there.
Yeah. Sean already had that on the list.
Yeah, it's already there.
Yeah, I had already done a workout yesterday, which is unusual, but my son, he's been working out with one of his buddies for the entire summer. They've been going to the gym every day, and his buddy went back to school, so now he doesn't have anyone to work out with. I want him to keep going. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go work out, but I don't want to go to the gym. We'll go downstairs to our gym in the house. And yeah, I'd already done a workout, so that probably started the entanglement, plus the weather, plus moving treadmills. Next thing you know, I'm limping around pretty good. So
what are you, Will and Jada Smith?
I don't know what that means.
Entanglement? You don't know what that means? The August? Never mind.
I'm keeping up, Sean.
Oh, good. Perfect. Yes.
Wait, what?
First. We're good here.
Wow.
James, the entanglement was what Jada Pinkett Smith had with August Alsina. Is that how you say his name? Anyway, that was her affair that she had with Will Smith, or from Will Smith. Anyway, they're a whole
That's
thing.
The whole point. It's not an affair. It's an entanglement.
It's an entanglement. Yeah,
it's an entanglement. But I thought they had an open marriage. So
I can't understand that family.
Open entanglement.
I don't understand any of this. All of this is very bizarre and weird. But yes, we'll move forward. Okay, let's take care of business. If you're watching right now on YouTube, give us a thumbs up.
We've given them a lot of reasons to do that.
Yeah,
so far.
Oh, it's just weird, a weird opening. So give us a thumbs up. Also subscribe to the channel, especially if you're new. We are also opening up. I'll be sending out an email in the next day or two. But we're opening up the podcast here for sponsorships. So if you own a business or work for a business and have some say in what they do with their marketing budget, and you would like to see your business represented here on the Kings Beat podcast.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good, wholesome show, except for when Sean curses and poor Wes Wilcox's kids have to go earmuffs.
Hey, pay us not to do that.
There we go. You pay Sean enough, he won't curse. How about that? Awesome. Yeah, that's down below as well. We have a survey you can jump in if you do have some interest there. But yeah, for this season, we are going to open this up for some sponsorships and stuff like that. Nothing crazy, nothing nefarious. Just good, wholesome local businesses that would like to be represented here on the King's Beat. Outside of that, we will have a virtual happy hour coming up. It's just been a little hectic, and I haven't been able to cement the guest for what day and all that stuff. So I will get to that as quickly as possible. We are just days away from the start of training camp. We have media day on Monday. This coming up Monday, which is September 26th, right? We have training camp starting the next day on the 27th, and away we go. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get wild. The next 4 weeks is going to be a blur, but we'll have you covered here on the King's Beat. We'll jump back up to 2 pods a week. Also, we will be covering everything from training camp, and you'll have all kinds of information coming into your inbox as long as you're a subscriber to the King's Beat. Okay, guys, let's get into this. It is the dog days of summer. It's a little quiet, but I don't know. How are you guys feeling? We know who the camp roster is pretty much, although they haven't officially announced it. And where are your vibes at coming into this week?
I think for me, I mean, there's a interesting amount of battles that we've laid out throughout the course of this summer. Obviously third string point guard, there's interesting wing battles going on as well. And I'm kind of trying to familiarize myself with some of the guys that are maybe a part of those battles. Casey Okpala, Chima Moneki, went back and watched some of those Nigerian games that Mike Brown coached when they beat USA in a friendly. And I think there was 5 total games that they played throughout the course of those Olympics. So I'm really interested. We've heard a lot that the vibe is different or the energy is different with this team. I think there's understandable reason for optimism, but I'm ready to kind of see it in front of us and see what a Mike Brown led practice and just what this all looks like, really.
Yeah, we're finally going to have some things to talk about. I mean, that to me is the most encouraging. I don't know if that it's going to be. I know a lot of it's kind of funny, when you're away from the team for a while and then you start ramping up and we start using words like new and exciting and different, and that's all fine. I feel like this is going to be a boring training camp. And what I mean by that, it's a good thing. A boring training camp in the sense that there's going to be plenty of competition. I'm putting all that aside. Boring in the sense that this should mimic an ordinary, typical training camp that an NBA team will have. Not a lot of rest and relaxation early on. Not a lot of a laissez-faire kind of attitude as you move forward through the season and into the preseason, because the exhibition schedule always seems to come at kind of a great time, but then it's what you have 2 weeks or so of camp. It feels like exhibition is right there. Then you kind of focus more on those games. You go away from those 2-a-day kind of workouts that you've had early on and in the weeks leading up to the opening of training camp for a lot of these players who are doing so on their own. And then you get back into fine-tuning your camp again, and you're making your roster cuts. There's no travel, which is great. There's not you're not going out to Japan or China or India or anything like that. I think that's going to be a good thing, and I think for this team, it's going to be important for them to get out on a really good start from a physicality standpoint, because I think this is going to be. You've got some guys who are coming over after working in Europe. Obviously, Sabonis is a huge part of that. And you're just crossing your fingers that no one gets hurt. And I think this is going to have the most structure of an NBA training camp since Dave Yeager. I know that wasn't all that long ago, but that's the way camps should run. They should be kind of boring and tedious and monotonous. And I think that's what it's really going to feel good. And I think from our standpoint, there's going to be a lot of storylines that emerge. And I think it's been well documented on some of the, camp battles and who stays, who goes, and you have obviously some competition. But I think there's some other intriguing aspects out there, and I think a lot of them just has to do with the coaching staff in general and how they will approach these next several weeks before they tip the season off.
Sean, you talk about it being boring, and I think it's interesting. We kind of know the rotation. Like, there might be one spot in the rotation, maybe two spots available in the rotation. And I think that that's new. Like, as far as like, there's going to be battles for a minute. There's going to be some sort of battles for who starts and who doesn't. But even that doesn't seem like it's that big of a mystery. I mean, I think all of us here, we're pretty sure that it's going to be De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes and probably Keegan Murray, but then Domantas Sabonis. Maybe one of those spots is up for grabs, but I don't think so. So it really comes down to like who is going to be able to fight their way into the rotation, who's going to be able to earn minutes, and I think there is a debate on like who gets cut and who doesn't. Like, there's probably 5 or 6 guys up for the 3 spots that are going to be cut. And so there's going to be some battles for that. There's going to be battles for minutes. There's going to be 1 or 2 battles for starter stuff. But I think it should be kind of mundane. And like, this is like a professional organization that brought in a bunch of players that kind of know who they are and what their roles is. And it's something I wrote about this weekend. When you go through the roster, there's like a clear thing that's happened. And if you go over the course of like the last 10 years or 15 years of Kings basketball, it's kind of a new approach to go with a bunch of guys who are right around the same age, who will kind of go through this process together. And so like when I wrote down the rotation that I see right now, just ages, 24, 24, 24, 24, 30, 22, 28, 26. Like, the average age of the rotation of this team, that's 8 players, is right around 25.3 years of age. And to me, it feels like this might be one of the first times where you don't have to have some big leader guy. Everyone is kind of a mature player who's in their second contract, who isn't trying to figure things out, except for Davion and Keegan Murray. And if there are 2 things that you know about those guys, is that they're mature players who know their roles. And so we kind of have a group that's coming into the season with an understanding. Like, this is like, there needs to be some accountability, but the accountability is already put in place by the fact that a lot of these guys are mature players who are all coming into their prime together and are moving forward together. Am I off in thinking that?
No, I think that makes sense. I think that the 2 younger guys you point out certainly are, like you said, viewed as mature and I think self-sufficient, which helps. But I think that it's really that, I don't know if immature is an irresponsible label for some previous players that were on Sacramento's roster, but that's almost what it felt with some of them. And if anything, it's more that there's nobody that I look at on this roster as like a potential problem or somebody that you have to like check when it comes to their personality or work ethic. And this is from the outside looking in, obviously, but I think that there were those guys previously. So I think that that's a big factor in what you're talking about. And it also helps that on top of that, like, maybe you don't need a primary vocal leader, but I think you kind of also have more of those than you did in years prior, in my mind. Like, I think that Domas really falls into that. And we saw that at the end of last year. And I think we'll see that more as he grows more comfortable throughout this year. And it seems like Mike Brown is touted as that sort of guy. But to me, I think that what I take in, or the way I interpret kind of what you're saying, is that there's nobody that needs that sort of leadership, which I think is a big positive going into this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with all of that. With respect to people who were here before, I don't think it was a maturity level. I think it was just simply basketball IQ, and you don't have structure around them to quite check them on things, to quite keep, there was an encouraging of behaviors. And to me, I feel like this is a much, much smarter basketball IQ type of team. And that was purposeful. They went out there. So I don't think necessarily that it's a maturity. I don't think. I mean, again, I mean, let's just pull the cloak down. We're talking a lot about Buddy Hield. Dude's 29 years old, so it's not maturity. It's a guy who just didn't have a lot of basketball IQ, and he had the ultimate bright neon green light to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. So that's some of the stuff when we talk about basketball IQ, structure from the coaching standpoint, discipline from the coaching standpoint, accountability, things like that. Like that's big. I don't know that I would call that a maturity level. So that's the only part where I would disagree slightly. But I will say, I think like James, to your point about the leadership role, I think the leadership role changed the minute they made that trade. I mean, you just look at the way guys like De'Aaron Fox, even veterans on this team, looked at Domantas Sabonis. And I'm not saying that Domantas Sabonis is this great big leader. I think he's capable. I think he brings a lot of people together. He's very team oriented, and there is a little bit of an accountability, and I think he's capable of being that. I think he almost needs someone even to maybe be a more of a vocal leader in that regard and take some pressure off Sabonis, because look, everyone seems to follow the way the best player is. I mean, that's usually the tone that the best player sets. So that is a form of leadership, and I think Sabonis has those qualities. I think he needs help in that regard. I think. That's a question mark that I have. I don't know if they really have that outside of him, but that may not matter based on the way your coaching staff is, the way the structure is, and the way everyone tends to follow Sabonis. I think that can work. It's part of it's something that we've identified, and you want to see the way it blossoms, because frankly, when Sabonis was here last year, it was far too short of a sample size, and even in the games that in playing with De'Aaron Fox. So these are things that are going to kind of come to light. And like you said, Brenden, I don't think they have any problem childs on the team or anything like that. I don't think that you can identify any behavioral things that you would identify as possibly problematic. So I think this is going to be a very good character team. I think this is a team that's going to be very, very unselfish. And I think you hope training camp, bears fruit that way in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't specifically talking about Buddy Hield. I mean, Buddy Hield is a guy that, like, again, comes up time and time again when we have these types of discussions. But this is a point that I'll make. Like, in De'Aaron Fox's rookie season, 2017, it was him and 4 other rookies on the roster. So, not only did they have 3 first-round picks with Justin Jackson and Harry Giles and then Frank Mason in the second round, but they also brought Bogdan Bogdanovic in. And then you add that to the fact that the previous year, they had also drafted 3 first-round picks. So you had, Papagiannis, you had Scal, you had Malachi Richardson. Then in the middle of that 2000, then you also acquired in that season Buddy Hield. So you walked into that season of De'Aaron Fox's rookie year, and you literally had 9 guys who were in their second year in the league that were part of your main roster. All of those were rostered players, every single one of them. And we all know this, at the NBA level, some guys never get it and they find themselves out of the league, but it takes a while for players to understand what their role is and how they fit into the NBA game. And when you've got 9 guys, I mean, that's like herding cats. I mean, how do you even do it? How, you bring in a 40-year-old Vince Carter and a Zebo and a George Hill. Well, what are those guys supposed to do when each of them have 2 or 3 players that they're supposed to take under their wing? And that's where this season feels different. Some of the guys who are sort of on the outside or standing there looking at the rotation, I mean, a couple of them are longtime NBA players like Alex Len or Kent Bazemore or, Matthew Dellavedova or Quinn Cook. But a lot of them, they're not players that are going to either play a lot or they are defined role players. Trey Lyles knows exactly what his job is. Alex Len, they know what their jobs are. So that's what I think kind of feels different about this year. The overall basketball IQ, but also maturity level, and also the overall, people know who they are, and they're not trying to be something different. Kevin Huerter knows that he can score more points, but it's not by doing something crazy. It's by getting more 3-point attempts. and Malik Monk knows he's going to be like a lightning plug off the bench. I just feel like this might be one of the years where I know kind of who I can pin in stats for almost every single one of these guys. And I don't think I can remember another year where I could do that.
I have a question for you guys. As somebody going into my first training camp, and I think listeners from the outside looking in, this could be useful also. Like in previous years where there's been a coaching change or significant roster change, when do you first start to notice the difference with the group? Is it at training camp? And like, what are typically the things, what would be the giveaways that something is different here?
Ask that again. I'm not sure I understood. You're just trying to find what's different with the coaching staff, with a roster. What specifically?
Yeah, I guess we can focus on the coaching staff. Like in previous years when there's coaching staff changes, what are the things that stand out, or when do you realize kind of this is different? This is something that they're approaching it differently.
It's an evolution, but I don't think that it ends. I think you're always going to harken back to previous seasons and go, oh, okay, this looks different than previous seasons. This approach, this technique, this scheme, this strategy, this person's willingness to change his style of play. It's kind of an evolution throughout the season. I think there are things that you're going to look to right away and just see what leaps out. For example, how are coaches involved with players? How are who's shooting with who? I always like to see that. Like I like to see who's interacting with who gravitates towards each other, because that tends to show a little bit of a tighter bond than ones that work out separately or alone, or they have their own thing that they're doing. Training camp is a spot for it, but again, like you don't see a whole lot. So I think you're going to have to. A lot of that will come through several practices and even several exhibition games into the season to see some of these things kind of come to light. I think it's an evolution. It's not like really first week, 2 weeks. I mean, there are things you can have a really good feel for in those first couple weeks, but ultimately, it's going to be an evolution and a process.
Yeah, Brenden, I would say this for me, like I always compare like media day to the first day of school. And same thing goes with like day one of training camp. Like everyone shows up wearing brand new clothes, right? And they all look different. You haven't seen them for a little while. Everybody, somebody's added some weight, somebody has gained some, like gained weight the wrong way. Some guys show up and they clearly are already icing the knees and stuff. But what I mean by like the first day of school is, everyone always has like their first day of school outfit and like their second day of school outfit, their third day of school. By like the fourth day, some of the kids have run out of new clothes to wear and they're back to their old stuff. But point I would make is that like 2 weeks from that first day, all of those clothes have been washed like a couple of times and they just look like regular clothes now. They don't look like the new day, the first day of school. And so you very quickly turn from like this, everything is new, everything is shiny, everything looks so clean, to, okay, we're back to normal. It feels like the same old deal. It's just what the vibe is. And, I can tell you this, last season, like they talked such a big game, like the whole stacking days. And, I remember we were sitting out in the lobby and you could hear the team yelling and screaming and pushing each other. It was almost like it was a laugh track, because that's at the end of the day what it ended up being. Like they talked a big game and they got to the regular season and it was the same old Kings. So
well, yeah. But the problem with that is you can't just change behaviors overnight and work ethics overnight.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of something that if you're Rico Hines, for example, you're hoping that these players take with them in the years to come. Like that's what it should look like. And if you compare it to the 2 years prior to that, no, it wasn't nearly like that. You didn't have that type of energy in the building. You had a more, that's what I'm kind of talking about with that laid back approach. Last year was the year where you're like, no, we need to be better. We need to practice better. We need to develop work habits that are of a professional manner that other teams have. Like you get guys that'll come in here and look around and go, you have the facility, you have the resources. it's within you. It's within you as a player, and not really having that person to galvanize the group. You have just kind of it's just a laid back demeanor. So you don't really have that competitive edge. You have competitiveness within a game, but in a practice, that needs to pour over into practices. And practices are oftentimes, a lot of film study, because you had to get your guys that basketball IQ. You had to eliminate bad habits. So it's a tough mixture of the two. But last year was very, very focused on the stacking days. That doesn't go anywhere. Just because Rico Hines is gone, that whole mantra has to go forward. That's a changing of development and habits within the players, and hopefully they take that with them, because that was a building block. It's not like that was just window dressing or hollow words. Like it doesn't necessarily equate to wins and losses, particularly in that first season, but that's something that you still have to carry over. And I think that's luckily something that, even though Rico Hines is gone, I think Mike Brown and his coaching staff and the structure and the discipline that they will have, I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're still going to see those traits and those types of characteristics kind of carry forth.
Yeah,
the mantra that stood out to me real quick throughout the course of Summer League was Jordy just constantly saying it's about process, not results.
Right.
And the results will come with it.
I mean, when you think about it, think about what you just said. That's essentially stacking days, right? You're building a process. You are. I know people don't like to use process because they just equate it to Philly, but you're stacking these days. You're just building equity within your team, right? And that's you're hoping those change habits, and you streamline so much of what your work ethic and your identity of your team will be, and that's the challenge. And I think that's what, like, we're going back to the coaching search. That's one of the reasons why, of the group that you had, Mike Brown stuck out like a sore thumb to me, because he's OCD, he's structure, he's disciplined, he almost to a fault. Like it's kind of been his Achilles heel at certain points with major superstars like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant in his path. So this I think will be fun for him, and I think this is going to be fun for this group, because you don't have like that global superstar on your team, and you have a lot of guys that are just striving to win games. So you have to start somewhere, and I think this is going to be a good building block for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too, but I think where I'm at is that the whole stacking days mentality, how you walk into a season, in Sacramento, it feels more like a New Year's resolution, which goes really, really strong until about January, 18th, right? And that's where, you need a cultural shift, where it's not about, some short-term thing. It's about creating habits that last. And some of these players have habits that last. Again, the way that Harrison Barnes maintains his body, takes care of himself. That's something that he was taught, but it's something that he doesn't, deviate from. It's who he is now, that he does this amount of work to maintain who he is as a player, and sort of who he is as a person. So we need more of those habits to not just be a fad diet, or giving up alcohol for as long as you can. It's got to be something that it's dedicated, and that we see stick. And it's something I think the reason why I bring that up is it's not like other franchises haven't found guys that have developed that. Because I watch, Taylor Jenkins and the Memphis Grizzlies. They have a personality. That whole entire group has, and it's not going anywhere. I mean, what did they go, 20-3 or whatever when Ja was out of the lineup? That's just a next man up mentality. And it's, there's a steep drop off, even though Tyus Jones is there's a steep drop off between Ja Morant and anyone else on that roster. But when he was gone, it was just, okay, they just kept plugging away. And that was because their mindset has been set for the last 3 years. And that's why they keep getting better. Because they have the mindset, and then the talent starts to catch up and surpass the mindset. But as long as the mindset is still the building block, you can see the growth. And that's what we're seeing. And that's where, I think the Kings have an opportunity here. And again, I say it again, they have a bunch of players who are just about to enter their prime as players. That, to me, that's a good thing. These guys, most of these guys know exactly who they are, Now, can you get a coach that can put it all together and like push them forward?
I also think too, just to follow up on that, like you think about just the rigors of the season, and Brenden, you were mentioning about when things look different. Well, things start to look different when they experience some losing. How does your team handle losing a losing streak? And to James's point about what it looks like in January last year, it's like, well, yeah, your head coach is gone. You have a different person there. You've experienced lengthy losing streaks, and you're feeling like you've got guys that are likely feeling like, well, it's on us to turn it around. No one's going to come save us. But at the same time, it's like, nope, this is just kind of what we are now. And that's
And
kind
what
of
does my lease look like? How
right.
how
Yeah.
much am I going to get stuck with when I get traded
And
next month?
you're a month away from the trade deadline. And
Yeah.
to that point, like I said several times last year, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I think it bears repeating, where it's like if you're at best a 500 basketball team, and that could be maybe what this team is this year. 500 basketball has an inconsistency to it. One night you can look like a world beater, and like you've got it figured out after winning, 3 of 5 games, but then the next night you can look like you don't belong on the basketball court, and there's a terrible inconsistency that comes with that. Typically, what's been the most consistent thing with the Sacramento Kings is inconsistency, and the consistency has just been losing basketball, losing mentalities. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's going to be, and I think this also, Brenden, especially for someone like you who's come along in a time where you didn't have the most access as a media member due to a global pandemic. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of people within the media, and I don't just mean here in Sacramento, but I think there's going to be a lot of overreactions. And maybe that's our Tuesday overreaction stuff, is like, I just feel like there's going to be a lot of people overreacting to any little thing that they see. Because by virtue of not just being around the team as closely as they've had before, and reading into so many different little things so early on, and meaning that's a corner turned, or that's a this monument peak that you these little barometers that you set for yourselves, or little goals or whatever. Oh, this person's turned a corner. This person's has added this to their game, and it's just. You just got to relax and get maybe 20 games into the season. That being said, like, I feel like you can get a real good taste of what the character of the team will be, what they set out to do. I don't want to say identity, but you should have an idea of what the team is going to be good at. And I think by that alone is where you start maybe drawing some of your expectations. Like, I famously don't. I've said, like, I don't have a feel for this team right now, and it's because I don't. There's not enough sample size from last year to carry over to this year and say, hey, I think they're going to do this. You can be cautiously optimistic. You can be excited for your team if you're a fan, but for anyone to coming out and say, I think they're going to win 40 games, it's like, okay, based on what? You haven't seen it yet. So this is kind of the moments where you're going to get those tastes, and I feel very fortunate that, or very confident that when we get into October, you'll have a really good sense of what this team is going to be.
Sean leading Tuesday overreactions. What is going on here?
What?
He almost
I
said
did.
should at one point in there too. I thought we were about to get a legendary rant.
Oh, here we go. Pumpkin spice latte rants again, like of that quality. Had a lot of feedback on that.
I'll take your inconsistency point a step further even. I think as a team that is so reliant on their offense, like, there's nights that shots don't fall. Even, like, they're a lot better of a shooting team this year with Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, both 41.9% catch and shoot three-point shooters. Keegan Murray is going to be really good in that aspect. Sometimes shots won't fall. I don't think it'll be as inconsistent as last year, where they just had a lot of bad shooters getting up a lot of shots. But the way that you can find consistency is on the defensive end, in my mind. You can be of a certain caliber on that end every single night.
Yep.
And that's where is going to be a big question when it comes to this Kings team. And I think it goes back to process versus results. It's not about did the shot go down. It's about, was it a good look for the right type of guy, and all factors considered. And same for the other end. It's not about did they make the shot or not, the team that we're up against. It was, did we put them into a tough situation? So I think as a team that's so reliant on their offense, and we're still TBD when it comes to defense, but I would still say more likely than not a bottom 10 defense that we're talking about here. Inconsistency is probably going to be something we see throughout the course of this year, at least just when it comes to results.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. I mean, what we have to see is what this team looks like after losing two straight, and then they have a back-to-back coming up on the schedule that's not friendly. Like, that's brutal, that you don't expect them to win. And what do they look like in game one, but also game two of that back-to-back? And does it grow to four, or do they figure out a way to stop it, like the streak? And that's something that this team has never been able to do, at least in my time covering the team. It's just they are emotionally weak, it feels like, most seasons, and they let go of the rope way too quick. So, like, how does that happen this year? And do they have enough competition on the roster that if, like, look, if you see guys have let go of the rope, can you switch them out? Can you go to someone else and say, look, that's not how we're going to do things around here. We're going to fight, we're going to scrap, and we're going to try to get through this. And it's something that this, like, historically speaking, there's always a point in the season. I think last year it came way earlier than anyone thought, where, again, that good vibe from training camp, everyone's new clothes, they looked really, really dirty and worn out about 14 games into the season. And then Luke Walton was no longer there after game 17. But we had no questions as to whether Luke would be there or not. We all knew he was going to go because they had already let go of it. And that's not something that I expect from this team. I don't. It doesn't feel like that is the personality of this team coming into the season. Maybe I'm crazy.
I would think that there's some value in the front office and coaching staff being on the same page, which didn't feel like the case in years prior. Like, it felt like Luke Walton was somewhat of, there when Monty got the job, rather than specifically the guy that he picked, and Monty being talked about as a guy that was, during his time in Houston, somewhat of a bridge between the front office and the coaching staff, like constantly interacting with D'Antoni. And I think, like, to your Memphis point, when it comes to culture, like, it is, in my mind, on the coaching staff and the top leaders of the roster to set that. But like you mentioned, they also have to go get players that fit that. And I think that is a product of the coaching staff and front office being on the same page, which hopefully we see a little bit more so with the moves that happen this offseason and going forward.
Yeah. Let's look at, we've talked about just about every position on the court at this point. But the power forward spot is one that I think is up for debate. And it's a position that when you look at it, I think there are I don't think there are the concerns that you had last year, but I think there are some variables that, like, I didn't really expect. So if we're looking at, just the three of Keegan Murray, Trey Lyles, Chimezie Metu, okay, like, I feel like the rookie is going to play a lot of minutes, but I also feel like we're going to see a lot of Rashawn Holmes. I think we're going to see a lot of Harrison Barnes at the four. I think if a guy like Chima Moneke, like, stands out in camp, we could see minutes go to him because of his versatility and his ability to play the three and the four. Like, where are you guys at with minutes for this position? I mean, if I'm, like, penciling down something right now, I think that to start the season, 24 to 26, maybe 25 to 26 minutes per game goes to Keegan Murray, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. But then who's going to get the rest of those minutes, and what does that mean for some of these guys, even, like, when you look at their roster spot and how much value they can bring to a team?
For me, I've said, Keegan Murray is the one that I would start. But I also think, you forgot Harrison Barnes. I think you're going to see moments where he's at the four again. So it's the positionless basketball that I know some people cringe when they hear that, but it is true. And it's, and it's things that I've heard along the way, like the ability of having Fox and Sabonis together on the floor at times. So, you're likely still going to see that. So I think it's a question mark for sure. I am not confident that Keegan Murray starts day one. I think he will by the end of the season and will have, started more games than not. But I don't think you'll see it right away. I could be wrong, but I just kind of going with what, kind of the earn it factor and see what happens in training camp. And I think they might lead a little bit. They might have, they might have a rotation in mind for that second unit and mixing in with the first unit. And obviously, as we've famously talked about before, Sabonis gets subbed out quite early on in games. So I think there's going to be it's going to be an interesting thing to follow really through the first month of the season. I think it's going to be an evolution of a rotation. I don't think that there's anything that's set in stone there on Mike Brown's staff, but I don't know if you can really look at minutes quite yet. I think if we're looking at the end of the year, I think more times than not, Keegan Murray will be your starting four, and he'll have about 25 minutes a game. I think that's something that should be the benchmark for him.
Yeah, I think by the end of the season, I would predict him to be up 28. I mean, I think that's where he's heading as a player. Like even in year one, 28 plus by probably game 50 or 60. But go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, believe it or not, I was going to throw out the number 28 as well. Kind of looking at some of last year's rookies and their minutes average, and you got to keep in mind the context of some of these teams, right? And the amount of games they maybe weren't trying to win. But Scotty Barnes led them far and away, 35 minutes a game, 33 for Evan Mobley, 32 for Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, 31 for Josh Giddey, Franz Wagner, 30. And then you get more to like what I would expect of a 29 for Herb Jones, a 28 for Chris Duarte. Davion ended with 27, almost 28, but it was right around 25 and a half prior to De'Aaron going down and him having those final 15 or so games at the end of the year where he just played a ridiculous amount of minutes. So I think that you're talking in the 28 range. And I think that, to Sean's point, I think you see a lot of HB playing the four. And to me, I kind of think all the 4 minutes go to Barnes, Murray, and Lyles. And I think that with the smaller roster that Sacramento has, there's a lot of times where you're going to see Herder at the 3, or maybe you see TD playing the 3. Is Bazemore, Paula, or Monecki going to be a part of this? I think all of those guys would function as a 3. And I think the 4 rotation kind of primarily goes to Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes, and then Trey Lyles getting a little bit of the leftover. And maybe there's times you look at somebody like a Chimezie Metu, if you feel like you could use a little bit more rebounding, is one of the reasons that Luke cited for putting him in there last year, and the athleticism if he functions well off Sabonis. But I think you see a lot of minutes. I personally would probably see a lot of minutes for Murray if it was myself early on, because I think that they just really could use his skill set, even if there's some growing pains. The shooting that he provides, he's an extremely smart player, and I think it's more beneficial if he kind of goes through those growing pains sooner rather than later, because I think they're going to need to happen at some point. And the sooner that he gets accustomed to the NBA game with his size, shooting, and IQ and ability and transition and just everything that he brings as the full package. Been saying forever they need another Harrison Barnes. And in my mind, they have that in Keegan Murray, and I would play him a lot right away.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because, I think Lyles is probably if you mention the 3 that are going to play the position, if I'm going to use a second power forward, like true power forward, it would probably be Lyles. But I don't think that that's even going to be a possibility, because, if we look at the minutes breakdown that we're talking about for the guard play, and we're looking at 34, 35 minutes a game for Fox, and we're looking at, even if you drop, Davion Mitchell down to like 25 minutes, like it's very quickly that you start running out of minutes. So like you get to Malik Monk, even if he's playing 22 to 25 minutes, Herder is going to play 30. Like you're already at like needing 15 to 16 minutes at the small forward spot just to fit those 4 players into the backcourt. So, if we figure that Harrison Barnes is going to play a bunch of minutes there, but he's going to slide over, you're still looking at like 12 to 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more, that Harrison Barnes is going to have to play the 4 in order to make it all work. Now you add that with Keegan Murray, and even if we have him at Sean's number, the 25 minute, and we're looking at Barnes at 15, all of a sudden you only have 8 minutes left at that power forward spot. And those 8 minutes, in all honesty, I think that they probably go to the combo of Rashawn Holmes and Sabonis as the big man, the dual big man lineup, that before they go to, before they go to Lyles, or before they go to, let's just say that Chima Monecki like completely stuns these guys with his ability to fly back and forth and defend two positions at the 3 and the 4 and be switchable. And they're like, hey, we like his energy, we like his back cuts, all that stuff. Well, like, there's just not a lot of minutes. So you're going to have to be an impactful player in a very small, limited role, no matter what, at that position. And that's when, again, I rattle off the 8 players that are, like, I think that are solid in the rotation. I think there's only one spot that's available. And even that one spot is probably, 12 to 15 minutes. And that's a stretch. I don't even know if that's it. Barring injury, this is what I'm looking at.
I take it your 3 off the bench are Davion, Monk, and Holmes
Yeah.
that you're accounting for? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, after that, I don't know where you go. Like, I think Keegan will play, like, a ton of minutes. And, I mean, if Keegan's down around 18 minutes a night, then, like, what in the world is happening? That's not why you drafted an NBA, probably the first or second most NBA-ready player. It's so he can play. And I don't see them backing off of that. And I think it's different because he comes in not as a raw talent like a Marvin Bagley. He comes in as, a mature 22-year-old. He might just be a sophomore, but just his game speaks maturity. Like, every time you watch him play, it's why people, compare him to Chris Middleton or they compare him to Tim Duncan. It's about his maturity on the court and his demeanor and all that stuff. Like, I don't think he gets rattled, and if he doesn't look rattled, you're going to play him a lot of minutes because he's really the only versatile guy at that 4 position that can defend multiple players, multiple types of players that can score in the post, shoot the 3, handle the ball, like all of the things that he can do. He actually fits better than everyone else on the team at that position.
What I'm kind of curious to see is how Mike Brown, especially with a team like this, and obviously you're going to have these a tight rotation, the writing of the hot hand, and if someone just ain't got it, then you're going to someone else. That's something I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how he manages a game, because I do think, at the end of it all, and you can see the average of minutes and how you divvy them up, but each game could take on its own personality. I don't expect to see that a lot, but I am curious to see how Mike Brown game manages, and might ride somebody, might take a shot on someone else if he feels that someone just has a bad matchup, doesn't have it. Will his rotations look different from game to game? The good teams don't, for the most part. The good teams will have your set rotation, and this is you roll with what you got. Bad teams, however, and mediocre teams and 500 teams tend to have a little bit different of personality. So I am curious to see how that takes shape.
Yeah, I could see if Malik Monk gets off to like a horrendous start and can't seem to find his role. Terrence Davis is going to get a look. That's where I could see it. If Keegan Murray if he struggles all day long, or if they're getting torn up and they need a super long defender, then maybe you mix and match here and there. But I think, Sean, you're right. I think it's going to be a tight 8.5, 9-man rotation.
And I think the back end of that rotation, like kind of to Sean's point, especially beginning of the year, is going to be a lot of testing and figuring out and situational. I think that there's a handful of guys where do we want to go with the offensive option or the defensive option? And I think that's solely based on who you're playing. If you're playing Portland, who doesn't have a good defense, you're probably going to want to look towards your defensive players, like a Davion Mitchell, who can hound the other opposing ball handler, a Damian Lillard, and the defense on the other end isn't going to punish his offensive shortcomings as much, and vice versa. If you're playing a really good defensive team, I don't think that you're able to throw out there the more defensive focused players that maybe causes you to struggle a little bit on spacing, and the good defensive teams of Boston and Miami is going to really make you pay for that. So I think that the back end of the rotation has some interesting like situational moments. Like I've been watching a little bit more KZ Okpala, and I gotta say I'm really, really interested. And I think there's maybe moments where you look at a wing creator on the other team that is really giving Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray fits, And it's like, maybe you want to go try and put KZ Okpala out there. Like, his defensive versatility is interesting. And take it for what you will. It's a friendly game, but when Nigeria played USA, KZ's guarding everyone from Damian Lillard to Kevin Durant. And I think that that's very telling of his versatility and ability out there. Like, but obviously you're giving up a lot on offense. So I think that a lot of it is going to be testing at first, in my mind, the end of the rotation and situational.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like these are the players that are kind of the wild cards, right? If you're looking at KZ Okpala, like it's why I think that like his roster spot might not be as up for grabs as it might, it might be in another situation because like we saw it last year with Mo Harkless. How many times did you see them like, hey, go guard Luka for as long as you can? But when you face a Paul George, when you face a Kawhi Leonard, when you face a LeBron, I'm not saying he's gonna be able to shut these guys down, but he's at 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan. Like he's the one guy that you might have that's physically built to take on that challenge, and maybe he's got the defensive like maturity at this point in his career that maybe he can do that. But he's gonna have to provide something on the offensive end, or it gums up everything, unless you're putting him in a lineup with like 4 other shooters, which I mean the Kings can do, but like how will they do it and when can they do it? So yeah, I think there is some interesting what you're talking about, some roster flexibility on the back end. Again, if you're getting pounded and getting foul trouble and guys are going right at you in the paint, Alex Lynn, throw him in there, like give him a shot because he can block shots, he can get physical with people and pop somebody. So I do think there is some interesting flexibility on this team. Brenden, you have some fact or cap today. Are we going back to this? Fact or cap? What do you got for us?
I do. I have a couple. And some of them are rotation based, so it kind of goes with the theme of this conversation. First one I have for you, gentlemen. Fact or cap. Terrence Davis will play more total minutes than Chimezie Metu this season.
Sean? I got Terrence Davis will play more than Chimezie Metu. I'm going to say fact.
Man, I don't know.
I think it's a toss-up, though. Yeah.
I'll go fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go fact. Mainly because we just don't really have clarity on what Mezzi is going to look like this year. I feel like the way shooting can be in this league and the way it comes and goes, I think it just provides more opportunity for someone like Terrence Davis. I mean, we're talking about when you break it down, like Chimezie Metu is in a discussion of someone who may not be on the team. We're not really talking that way about Terrence Davis. So just from that standpoint, I think I have to go with fact on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to add this too. It feels like every time we've seen like some sort of major situation with this team during the offseason, Terrence Davis is always there. And that tells me that Terrence has been in Sacramento most of the summer. I remember when they hired Mike Brown, Terrence was one of the guys that came in along with Davion and De'Aaron and Rashawn Holmes. I think Rashawn Holmes and Terrence Davis have been around Sacramento a lot more than most of the other veterans. And that's a smart move for Terrence Davis. I mean, he's coming off a wrist injury, and, he's a guy that has a lot of talent. I'd even put his talent. I don't think that there's that much difference between him and Malik Monk. It's just the fact that every time that he's had some setbacks, every time he goes to take a step forward, he takes 2 back sometimes. So, yeah, I'm going to say fact.
I'll add this just as the cynical view. I mean, yeah, if you're Terrence Davis and you're coming off this injury and you're looking around and go, oh, they just added 2 namely guys that are familiar in this league at my position who are essentially 2 guards. Yes, one of them is capable of being a 3, but and Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter, that gives you all the reason you want to kind of stick around Sacramento and try to still remain in the conversation. So, yeah, he's got some. If you're Chimezie Metu in that regard, you drafted a player that plays your position, but he is still a rookie, and you think you may have built some equity in the year that you had prior. So, but at the end of the day, I still feel like the way shooting is in this league will provide more opportunity for someone like Terrence Davis.
I went with fact as well. I thought it was a little interesting of a debate as guys that are on fringe of the rotation, and I kind of figured whichever way we leaned in this meant like, are we thinking more big lineups more often or small lineups more often? Even though they are difference in positions there, and I went with TD as well. Next one I have here, James. Can
I say one more thing real quick? I'm not actually backing off of what I said like a month or whatever it was ago. Like I still envision a way Chimezie Metu can be an impactful player on this team. I think it's just a matter of figuring out your rotation and whether or not he's a part of it. Because again, like with respect to Trey Lyles, like you have to beat out Trey Lyles. Like that isn't necessarily a world beater at the 4. You know what I mean? So I think Chimezie Metu could have an opportunity to still be a very impactful player. Obviously, you have injuries and whatever. I think that has to take shape. So that's one of the reasons why I still give pause there. But I think, again, like with somebody like Terrence Davis and the way shooting is in this league, as I mentioned before, I think that will just provide more opportunity. But that being said, like it's only because we don't really have clarity on what Mezzi is going to be this year. It would not surprise me to see Mezzi a part of this rotation. It really wouldn't. And even possibly beating out the likes of somebody like Trey Lyles. I don't think it's unheard of. I wouldn't bet on it, but I don't think it's unheard of.
Okay, I'm going to add something too. You're asking about, like, what your statement was about more like either big man lineups or small ball lineups. I think that this team has the capability to do all kinds of small ball lineups where they tried it last year to start the season. But there's just a huge difference between having Rashawn Holmes act as your, orchestrator of a small ball offense versus having Domantas Sabonis act as orchestrator. And I think that we'll see a lot, especially with Jordi Fernandez coming from the Denver Nuggets. I think we're going to see a lot of the same style of offense that we saw from that Nuggets team, where Jokic just is basically the center of the universe, and everyone else is orbiting around him in some way, shape, or form. And so that might open the door for a guy like Terrence Davis to get more minutes. And again, I don't think there's a lot of minutes at the 4. And I don't this is like an 8-man rotation with like a half in my book. And I think a guy like Chima Moneke, again, if he can show that he can defend the 3 and the 4 and be versatile enough to play with multiple players, he's going to be a lot more valuable than a guy like Chimezie Metu, who realistically is just a 4, who maybe is even like in certain situations a 5. So just my thoughts on it.
This next one is for the good people of Portugal.
Jesus,
I'm sure you're going to get to the center rotation, James, in your series that you're going on, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in one of these next episodes. But as a little bit of a preview ahead, Neemias Keda played 120 total minutes last year. I think I heard you say on the last episode, James, correct me if I'm wrong, that you think there's times you should look to Keda over Len. And I disagree a little bit there. So I'm curious where we land on this. I said, again, Keda played 120 minutes last year. Factor cap, Keda will play at least 400 minutes with Sacramento this next season. Tristan Thompson played 455. Alex Len played 620. I know Holmes is on this roster as well, but I think the idea is that it wouldn't be surprising to see him moved on from. Did I set the number too high? I guess would be my first question. I originally had it lower.
Yeah, 400 minutes is a lot.
I don't think that's happening. I think it's a cap. Because again, I think when we were talking about Neemias is Stockton. I mean, I think Stockton is where he lives, and he needs to flourish. He needs to take another step while playing in Stockton. So I think that's first and foremost. I think last year he didn't play enough in Stockton. It was my, one of my beefs about it. So this is the year where he flourishes in Stockton. Hopefully, I think if things go well there, that's a good thing. But I don't see him getting 400 minutes.
What if we set it to 300?
You dick.
Pretty much double of last year. That's originally what I had
things.
it at. It's originally what I had it, and I second guessed myself. I should have stuck with 300. But it'd be close to double of what he played last year.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, 300 is different than 4.
Yeah, because that's just doubling what you did last year, and I think that's possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 300 yes, 400 no. But like, look, I still believe that if there's a situation where Sabonis goes down, and he's gonna be down for 2 to 3 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks, then you're gonna try to get Neemias involved at that point. And that's where, like, I think if it's a long-term issue, that we'll see Neemias Keda work himself into the lineup, especially if it's a long-term issue at mid-season or in the second half of the season, where it's like, okay, look, if you don't have Sabonis for 25 games, you're pretty much cooked. So I think that they're going to use Neemias because he has an ability to pass where I don't think the other guys do. And you can run an offense through him. He does that monster pick and roll. You can do all kinds of high post and mid post. And like, I think that he's just more versatile than the other guys. If you're going to have an issue, I could see him being a long-term fixture. So barring a Sabonis injury, though, I just don't see it. I don't think that there's a way, because I think they're going to hold on to Rashawn Holmes.
So did you say even at 300 minutes, you think that you don't see it?
300 is tough. I think that's right on the bubble. Because, even last season, he was up. Like, I think we both have an issue that he didn't play enough games in the G League, but
Right.
he was with the Kings, the parent club, a ton. It was
Right.
just he didn't play. And so I always thought that was weird. I thought that they mismanaged how they brought him up for long stretches and then he never played. And it would have been just more advantageous to his development to send him back to the G League and let him actually play.
Well, his game days were practices. That they wanted him around the team a lot.
Yeah.
I think it was by design. I wouldn't call it a mismanaged necessarily, because like, he wasn't helping them last year on the court. He wasn't going to be somebody that would help them on the floor. So Stockton he should have had more time in Stockton. I do believe that, but yeah, man, it's also not a big man's league anymore. So it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
With 300 even, I will go Cap. And I still like Nemi. I just think that's a product of, I think that Len is going to be more reliable. I think it's easy to forget that, like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about Alex Len too much, but I think he's a quality, like, backup big in the league. And I would go with him over Keda when it comes to immediate production pretty confidently. And so I just think that, barring Holmes getting moved on from it and not getting another big in return, that it's hard for me to see those minutes for Keda. But I don't think that I'm not trying to say that that's me feeling a type of way about how his long-term projection is or anything. I think that we kind of all are in agreement that I really want to see him perform and excel in Stockton this coming year.
What'll be interesting to see is if Mezzi plays a 5 at all, because like, you don't have that Damian Jones necessarily, and some might think, oh, maybe that's more minutes for Alex Len. Maybe that gives Nemi an opportunity. Maybe it's just more minutes that get divvied up between Sabonis and Rashawn Holmes. But I do feel like there is that other person that can play the 5, and that's, do they go small, and is that Mezzi at the 5? So we'll see, man. Like, that's some of the things that they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah,
We saw moments of HB at the 5 even, I feel like, these last 2 years.
We've seen it. It's not good. It's not good when we see it.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue too is that, like, look, if you look at Rashawn Holmes and Sabonis, you have like 57 to 60 minutes of center. Like, where can you even find the extra 12 minutes? Like, where can you find those 12 minutes to, like, put them somewhere else? Like, to get them the minutes that are required for them to just play a basic amount of minutes. And I don't think, like, you're going to steal minutes from the 4. That's where I just don't think that there is, like, a bunch of extra spare minutes for big men. I don't know that Trey Lyles or Chimezie Metu will see the floor at all. I don't, or that Moneki or Okpala. Like, it's going to be tight. The minutes are going to be tight.
All right, last one I have here is a little spicier and in a whole different direction.
Uh-oh.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Factor
Spicy.
cap. If Sacramento misses the play-in, Monty McNair will be let go.
Well, that's Uh, no, I don't know that one has anything to do with the other, to be honest. Because if... Go ahead, James. What do you got there? Well, because I feel like, look, I feel like they're going to handle his pick up the option. I feel like that's probably going to happen. I think it's just good politics and good business, and it's not like he makes a huge amount of money.
So wait, is there an option year? Because I haven't heard of an option year.
Not just pick up, just basically like if you give an extension or maybe you extend him, whatever. If you extend him, I don't feel like you're going to. It's necessarily going to preclude you from letting him go at the end of the year. But I don't think if you're letting him go at the end of the year because you missed a play-in tournament, I don't think that's ultimately that the blame lies on you. I think he's gone out and made moves, and he's made moves that have been to the liking. I think they've made solid moves, to be honest. I think the franchise-changing move that he did to bring in Sabonis, albeit risky, it's not like he did it without the blessing of his owner, so they're lockstep with one another. I think if he's leaving or getting fired, it's beyond the wins and losses of things. I think it has to do more so with fit within that front office. His either willingness to want to be here, the ownership wanting him here or wanting to go in a different direction. Look, someone's head's going to have to roll if they don't make the play-in tournament or something as small as that. I get it. There's something that you're going to try to hold someone accountable. I just don't know that it'll be for that reason. I don't think it would be for Monty McNair. It won't be Mike Brown. I mean, you just brought Mike Brown in, so you've got a little bit of a honeymoon period there.
Well, what's left after that?
Well, and again, there's things you can do, but yeah, you've at that point you have someone like De'Aaron Fox who you ultimately might have to move. You have pieces on this roster. Maybe you determine after 1 year that going Sabonis' way isn't going to behoove of you. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of things that can play a part there. I don't feel that letting Monty McNair go at that point will be because of wins and losses.
Okay, I'm gonna go a different way. I'm gonna say I've checked in multiple times. I haven't in the last couple of weeks, but whether there's even been conversations about a potential extension, and there has never been, to my knowledge. Maybe that's changed in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but I'm going to say if the Kings barely miss a play-in, it's close, then I think he still has a shot to maintain. And that's let's be realistic. The play-in should not be a 33-win team. That's crap. If that's who you are, then you didn't take any steps forward. You just spun your tires for another year, and that's not good enough. So, if this team is in a battle, but the play-in / playoff spot is more 44 wins, and you're right there, but you're just not quite. I think he'll get more time. If you miss the playoffs by 8 games, yeah, I think he's done. That's just my opinion. If
he misses the play-in by 8 games,
yeah, if you miss play-in /
because play-in is not playoffs, just for people listening. It's not the same.
No, but if you miss a play-in / let's say you miss a play-in by 5, but the playoffs by 8,
if you miss the play-in by 8 games, something went horribly wrong. That would be catastrophic.
Well, yeah, but this is the Sacramento Kings. Even the year that they won 39 games, they missed the playoffs by 8 games that year.
Yeah, that's different. It was a different.
Well, there was no play-in. Yeah,
and there's no play-in. So
yeah.
Missing the playoffs by 8 games as opposed to missing the 12th seed. That's
or the 10th seed
or the 10th seed. Excuse me. That's as a 12th seed or something like that. That's horrible.
Yeah, but if you miss a play-in by 5 games, yeah, I don't think he's back. I
don't.
Yeah.
I maybe I can't articulate it well enough. I just don't feel that wins and losses are tied to Monty McNair as much, if that makes sense. Because again, you're trying to piece together a team that has talent and win games. I get it, but I just don't feel that that the shortcoming would be on Monty McNair if this team doesn't make the play-in tournament. Again, it's
Who would it be on?
I think it's a lot on your players, to be honest.
Yeah,
a
but
lot
that's
will be
3
on your
years.
coaching staff.
Well,
Three
who picked
off
the
3
players?
years of what?
3 off seasons he's had to change the players.
Yeah, and which he's done. That's kind of my
Yeah.
point. Where he's shown the movement on his end to where I think he's drafted well enough. I think he's shown the ability to be able to, for the most part, make. I was critical of last offseason. I get it, but I think by and large, you afford him the opportunity to continue to retinker your roster. I feel like you had a coaching change. I feel like you've had. At that point, you're looking at other ends of your roster. I feel, in my opinion, and again, I feel like you need to have the continuity within your front office, and I think he's done enough to where that would warrant not only the extension, but even if they come up short in the wins and losses category, it's an evolution of your team. It's you've got some people there. You brought in a face of your franchise now in Domantas Sabonis. You've changed that. You'll still only have 1 year with Domantas Sabonis if things go south. Maybe it changes the calculus on how you feel about him. It would probably change the calculus on how you feel about De'Aaron Fox being a face of your franchise. But you also have acquired pieces around those two players that you have a long-term commitment to. People you've drafted, somebody like Kevin Huerter, you've got pretty long-term commitments there. So, yeah, man, I just don't think that the wins and losses will impact him as much to where his job will be on the line.
And I want to make sure I clarify this. Like, I wouldn't let him go. I think he deserves more time. I would lock him up right now, give him a 3-year extension or something. I think that he's earned it with the moves he's made. But that's different than whether I think he would get let go. So, like, my own personal, I wouldn't, but, do I think that they would? Yeah, I think they, if he doesn't get them there, at least to the play-in, at least to a game in the play-in, I think he's going to have a tough time, especially when you're realistically looking that you were not good enough to get past, you'd be the 11th or 12th best team, and in a league or a conference where 4 teams out of 15 have already cashed it in for the season. You got to be better than the last place team right there in that situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I tend to lean more towards. I think I agree with both of you. I don't think that I'd be shocked if he was moved on from, but I would personally like to see him on the same timeline as Mike Brown. I think when you let him make that decision to trade Tyrese Halliburton, if things go downhill, it's, in my mind, not this coming offseason, but the year after, where Domantas Sabonis is probably going to hit unrestricted free agency because it's complicated to the number that he's able to be offered when it comes to an extension is probably not going to be enough to keep him around, and he's probably going to end up hitting.
Yeah.
I would be shocked, right? More likely than not, going to end up in unrestricted free agency, and that's the point where if things have gone downhill, that maybe this looks really tough. But I think that he should, even just because the moves he's already made and the decisions he's been allowed to make that have been such a change to kind of their trajectory of the franchise, I think that he should still stick around. But my question kind of originated from this whole process versus results idea, where can there still be a good feeling around the team if they miss the play-in by a couple games? Because that's a very
question.
Clearly the goal. It is a different question, but I guess we can answer that real quick before we get out of here.
You could miss with 45 wins. Miss the play-in. You could miss the play-in with 45 wins.
And do you think you can feel good about that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. 45 wins. Are you kidding me? They'd sign up for that right now. If you were signing up right now, not knowing how things would shake out, you would easily sign up for that right now.
Yeah.
I think. Look, the moves that were made the last year, and even in this offseason, they're bigger than this season. But that being said, if this season is worse than the season from a wins-loss record standpoint than last year, you're going to feel really bad about that. That will not be the upward momentum you were hoping for. So to the point of, can you miss the playoffs? Yes, you can miss the playoffs and still have upward trajectory. But I feel like you need to be in that play-in game. If you're not, then I feel like you've got enough of a sample size to know that Fox and Sabonis ain't it, right? Like, I feel like that's something you're going to exit this season knowing. And other than that, most everything else is built beyond this season. So at that point, you really just have to decide which one, if any, do you want to keep in Fox or Sabonis. And I think that's the overall clarity you're going to have at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'll point out in the 2013-14 season, the Suns under Jeff Hornacek won 48 games and didn't make the playoffs. They didn't make the top 8 teams. So you can win 45 games and miss even the play-in. That's totally a possibility, because there are going to be a lot of easy wins this season. There are a lot of teams that are just like, nope, we're good. We want that 7'4" dude with the 8-foot wingspan, and we're good. So, is that it for Factor Cap? You got it. What do you got for us?
That is it, actually. I was just going to say real quick, I think that the play-in race and record-wise could look more similar to the East last year than the West did. Like the West, you're talking the 7 seed being 46 wins, 8 was 42, and then you're 36 and 34. I think you're going to see a super close race, kind of like the East, where the 7 seed is 43 or 44, the 8th is 44, and the 9th and 10th are both 43. And then you get a drop off to 11th being 37.
Yeah. No, I think that's the case.
How about a Factor Cap here? Factor Cap. There will be a Sacramento Kings player who replaces Tyrese Halliburton in ribbing Brenden Nunes for this season.
I'm going to say Cap. I don't think there. You think there's that guy? Well, if it is, it's Davion.
I'm rooting for it.
If it is, I think Brennan may have even set this up by just telling everyone that Davion can't shoot the ball at all, and that he doesn't think he's going to get any better. He's going to play 20 minutes.
Whoa,
did you say that?
It's not that I did it.
Yeah, where did you say that?
Whoa, did you say? I said it the same day that Sean said Rashawn Holmes is a lock to start alongside Sabonis.
I didn't say he was a lock, sir. Sir. Good Lord, man.
I will be the first to say I was wrong about Davion, but I have to see it. That is a good call, though. If there's anyone, it's probably Davion.
It's probably Davion. Okay, let's do this really quick. The business of basketball. The NBA is considering changing the 18. The age that you're eligible to be drafted from 19 to 18, and basically doing away with the one and done. Just quick thoughts. What do you guys got?
If you're good enough to be drafted at 18, then you should be drafted at 18. I'm for it. I thought there was a weird follow-up that maybe that doesn't change the one and done, and maybe that just means a Scoot Henderson, for example, wouldn't have to spend 2 years in the G League. And I'm interested to see how that would change the Ignite program over time and all this that we're starting to see become more and more prevalent. But I think if you're good enough to be drafted at 18, you should be drafted at 18.
I do love the Ignite program. I think NIL in college might have something to do with this as well, in the sense that now that NIL is out there for name, image, and likeness, and guys being able to profit off of that, that ultimately should open the door for 18-year-olds and high schoolers to jump to the NBA. I would caution, though, you can go back in the history of the NBA. There's a lot of dudes that have made the leap from high school to the NBA and worked out fine and have been ultimately legends in this in this NBA. But there are some cautionary tales. Honestly, I think the league and the way basketball is in a professional level, and I'm not just talking NBA and G League, overseas possibilities. I feel like there's ways for guys, even if they blow out and bust, making that leap, that there are some safety nets out there, and hopefully you get with a good agency and don't get taken advantage of, and hopefully you've got a family that is supportive as well. So I feel like there's more safety nets that exist now that did 20 years ago. So yeah, I think I'm all for it. I think the league is smart to maybe be cautious about it. I think it's really up to if I'm the league, I would literally put the ball in the court of the Players Association and say, whatever you want. If you want this, we're all for it. if you don't want this, we understand, and here's some things we can combat that. The G League Ignite program is chief among them. Maybe you create a second team as well. I don't know what the answer is there, but I would lean hard on the Players Association and let them make that call.
Okay, I'm just gonna say that, like, the league brings this up every single time there's a collective bargaining agreement. It's always one of the early things that are put on the table that maybe we can change, and then every single time we get to the home stretch, they pull it like Lucy pulls a football from Charlie Brown. I don't think the league is going to change it. I think they have too much invested in the Ignite and what they're doing there, and that sort of that pilot program that they're doing, and the success they've had there, where they've had a boatload of first round picks already, and they're gonna have a top 3 pick in this next year's draft, barring like some weird change. So I think that this is something that we'll talk about now, but I don't even know how you implement it, because they're talking like 2024, but like, how fair is that the Kings just traded their 2024 pick, and then all of a sudden a bunch of players, could be available in that year that wouldn't normally be available? And the same thing goes for like the 400 picks that the Oklahoma City Thunder and New York Knicks both have. Like, would you have made those same trades if you thought like the age restriction was going to go away in a couple of years? And the answer is probably not. So I think the league is it's a bait and switch thing. They're going to make this one of the topics right now, but just like they do in every other collective bargaining agreement for the last the last 3, they're just going to pull it the last second. That's just my opinion. All right. Do we have any final thoughts? I know Sean has some weird thoughts about the weather. We heard those in the beginning.
I already touched on that. How about, you know what? It didn't really get much play out there, so just in case people didn't see it, I know the Fan Fest should be a lot different this year, and hopefully a little bit more interactive now that we've got primarily a pandemic in the rear view, hopefully, fingers crossed. But, October 16th at the arena. I think it starts at 2 for everyone that's not a season ticket holder, but yeah, it should be fun. And it's going to last a while too, so they got a lot of neat little activities. And I just think Fan Fest before have been a little mundane. And I think now this one might kind of spice things up a bit. And hopefully it's kind of fun, because like I just saw like Chima Monecki do a player appearance the other day. I know there's some others that are coming up, and it's just fun to see people interact with players again, like fans interacting with players. And I'm fortunate to see it in other sports, not just in the NBA, that I have to cover. Being down at the 49ers for their home opener, obviously you got the Trey Lance injury that was really brutal, but just seeing fans interacting with athletes and having that, the reason you go to games a lot of times for a lot of these fans, and getting pictures and autographs and stuff like that, that's fun for them. So I think that it's nice to see those type of opportunities come available for fans again.
I think it's interesting. You bring up that we had the Kyler Murray situation this weekend where
that was ugly.
He may or may not have been accosted. I also saw this thing where Anthony on Man U went over to hug a former coach or a family member or something in the stands, but he had taken his shirt off and had it in his hands. And a dude had walked down the aisle with his hoodie pulled down, and as soon as he went to hug somebody, he grabbed his jersey and ripped it out, shoved it in his sweatshirt, and snuck up. People aren't ready to be back out in society. That's what
some people
we've seen.
Some people need to go back inside.
All the fights and all that craziness. Yeah, I think we've seen quite a bit of weirdness over the last year and a half as people have become socialized again. Brenden, final thoughts?
I've been watching more Okpala and Monecki, and I feel like I have to quickly apologize to Monecki, because last time I said that his defensive effort was maybe something that was a little concerning, and I think I might have seen a couple outlier games, because that definitely does not seem to be the case with Monecki. And I have a growing interest in Okpala, and I'm hoping I don't get Robert Woodard all over again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no one wants to be Bob Woodard again. I like Chima Moneki.
I just think it's funny too. You got a Jemias like image right over your
Yeah.
shoulder there, looking at you too. So
Yeah, he's like, look at the baby, look at the baby.
you do get the
There's something about these end of rotation guys. I don't know what it
you
is.
love 'em.
Woodard,
You love 'em.
Keon. I don't know.
You know what though? That's the best way. Like when young reporters break in, it's easier to talk to the young guys at the end of the bench because they're more accessible and they're just hanging out a lot of the time.
Yeah, but
And
I don't think that has anything to do with Brenden getting. It's not like he wasn't out there
true.
interviewing Robert Woodard and Jemias Ramsey and
true.
and if you are swayed by that, how dare you? You don't let your that's media 101. You don't do that.
Friends
journalism
don't let
101.
friends believe in Robert Woodard and Jemias Ramsey. That's what he's trying to say.
I feel like Brenden is the guy. He's that football fan who thinks that the backup quarterback is the star of the team, and
That's a
maybe the
sensitive
third
topic
string-
right now, Sean.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Yeah,
he
you're
might
right.
be the star of the team, Sean.
Could be the,
I think I have a type of these guys that are really impactful or
Are they?
disruptors on defense. I was
Are
just
they?
you got to let me get to the defense part. Disruptive on defense. Ignore Jemias, but I think Woodard, Okpala, Keon Ellis, disruptors on defense that are young, and it's like if they can do something on offense. So I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see.
You've
All
been
right.
poisoned by too much bad basketball, man. So you're looking for when it's bad, when you've had bad Kings basketball, it's terrible on defense. You're looking for anybody who shines on the defensive side. I get it, man. I get
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's going to do it. Brenden, good luck with your trip down to Southern California. I know you're going down to be with your dad while he's going through some stuff. But good luck with that. And look, we are going to crank up coverage starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Next week, you're just going to see a ton of coverage. So stick with us here at the Kings Beat. Make sure you're following Sean and Brenden and myself on Twitter and other social media platforms. I know Sean is big on the gram, so make
Legendary.
sure legendary on the
That
on
was
the
the most
gram.
boomer way you ever could have said that.
That's right.
James.
That's right. So so give us make sure that you're tuned in because this thing is cranking up and coverage is about to get real.
When's our next live show? That's what I'm looking forward to.
Maybe
need
we
to
do a live show
schedule
next
that.
week. Maybe we do a live show next
Okay.
week. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that happens.
Sean needs some DB in his life or what?
Yeah.
I just want to hear from some people, man. I like that. I like what people have to say. I like seeing their comments and stuff like that.
That's
Although
right.
one guy on the last read the YouTube comments, and he said he hits the right mouse button on it. I don't know what that meant. It's probably to mute me or to shut me up. That's fine. I can understand that. I'll look forward to hearing his podcast.
That's right.
But no, I don't care. I don't care if you like me or don't. It's fine. I like the feedback, and so the live shows are a lot of fun.
That guy probably
Yeah.
likes
Plus,
rain.
it keeps it fresh. Oh no, I know I'm in the minority when it comes to rain, man. I know that.
Hates the
I'm a weird
sunshine,
human being.
Loves the rain.
Love my
All right.
sunshine.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to jump on board with the Kings Beat. Get a premium subscription so you get invited to the next happy hour. We will have one soon. Just trying to balance like a million different things at once, and we'll figure it out. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham, and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast.
That's
I'm
scary.
James Han, your Kings insider for ESPN
Fix your back.
1320
Get your back better.
and the Kings Beat.
Sorry.
We'll see you next week.